Hi, I'm Rachel Salzberg, a mindset and leadership coach and founder of the movement and podcast series, the ReSoul Revolution. I believe that every person has the potential to create a story of transformation about their life that's so great it serves as an inspiration and model to our families, our communities, and our organizations. This podcast series serves as a platform for people to have a voice, and it serves as an inspiration for you to write your story. It's my mission through this podcast series to help people to realize their potential by resouling and connecting with themselves, and then resurging with confidence and empowered to share their gifts and purpose with the world. Please join the movement by listening to the ReSoul Revolution. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another wonderful episode of the ReSoul Revolution Podcast Series. Today, I am just so honored to have the opportunity to talk with a wonderful person who is really special to me. I met her actually at the onset of COVID. She became a client of mine and now a wonderful friend. And she has just an amazing story of transformation. And I have had the opportunity to witness her ability to really take 10 steps back and really focus on her own self-development and really focus on, how her mindset has really impacted the actions she takes and the results she's getting. And so took a lot of steps back to really identify, what do I want to do with this life? And what are my limiting beliefs? And through that, she's also been able to find purpose and through that purpose, being able to articulate that and then take action and inspired action. And so it's really wonderful to watch her transformation, and she's still in the process of transformation and her transition into her journey. So I have the honor of all of you listening to Andrea's story. So Andrea, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the world.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you so much for having me today. It's wonderful to be here. It's also interesting at the same time because I actually have a podcast as well. So I'm used to sitting on your side of the chair, and this is actually my first official interview on a podcast myself. So this is definitely a different experience, but I'm so happy to be here.
It's really cool. And I would love for you to kind of chat about the journey of coming to the conclusion of developing a podcast. Because before, first of all, tell kind of the audience, what it is that you did prior, prior to COVID and what was your kind of journey and then being laid off. And how you then came to develop this podcast series and what it's about.
So for the past, 15, 16 years, I have worked in the hospitality and events industry, and it's been an amazing journey. So much fun. I've always been very passionate about travel and people, and I had a really amazing experience. I mean, definitely got to do things that I don't know that I'll ever get to do again. And I say that, I worked at some very famous hotels in Chicago. I worked for the city of Chicago and most recently the city of Los Angeles, and just those connections and people that you meet. That journey has been something I'll never forget. The memories made were awesome. That being said, as I'm sure it's no surprise to everyone listening, when COVID hit, the travel industry got turned upside down on its head. And if you would have told me a year ago, a year from, say, April of 2019, if you would have told me in April of 2019 that, Andrea, the hospitality industry is going to be gone and you're going to have to figure things out, well, I would have said, you're crazy, because, the travel industry at the time was blowing up. Things were great. And, but here we are. And so come April of 2020, our CEO at my last company informed us that, listen, this has been declared a global pandemic. And I was working for a non-for-profit organization at the time, and we weren't going to have the funding as a result of people not traveling. So guess what? In 2 weeks, you are not going to have a job anymore. And that was just, it's a shock to hear, and you kind of go through stages of grief
Yeah.
when, with something like that. And, in some ways it was a good thing because I have a 2-year-old son who's now 2 years old. And my husband also travels a lot for work. And so our life was kind of crazy. I was, with the two of us traveling and managing a toddler and those sort of things, it definitely made for a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was just, at least for me, it was poof, gone. And that, I say that because I had been kind of struggling with the mom guilt, as they call it, of, hey, we need you to be in Los Angeles the day after tomorrow for a customer. And, pre-kids, that was all well and fine. But after you have a child, you can still do it and you want to do it, but it definitely adds a layer of complication. And also, for me, it added some sadness and anxiety. And so when all of this happened, it was a time for me to say, okay, I really need to mourn this loss, but also figure out the future and what is it deep down that I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And also relish this time with my son. It was April 1st when this happened last year. So we're coming up on a year now.
Yeah.
And so at the time, here in Seattle, I was like, well, I get to spend, maximize my time of the most beautiful weather in Seattle and kind of try to figure things out. And, what is it that I want? Who am I now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually when I reached out to Rachel through a friend of mine here in Seattle, talked about you and talked about how amazing you are. And that's when I gave you a call and you were like, yeah, let's figure this out together. And, our energies just meshed. And so, that's how I started the self-development journey.
I've so been honored to witness, and, whether through coaching and your journey and how you embrace this journey and incredibly difficult, but, as like you and so many moms and women who, are impacted by the pandemic and still are incredibly impacted, but how it's kind of shifted perspective, and for you to take 10 steps back and take the opportunity to leverage the opportunity of time to ask yourself, what did you really want, bigger picture in this life, and to understand kind of and articulate what your core values were, in terms of family and spending time with your son, and also the self-development and slowing down, and so that getting off that treadmill and going, doing, you were able to kind of slow down and to really focus on what are the belief systems that I have that either have limited me in the past, and being aware of that so that it could shift the mindset. And it's been wonderful to watch you develop the discipline to shift mindset, to develop resilience. And that's why I would love, for you to continue your story, because you're a perfect model for women in the community to ReSoul and research, right? And to share your, although we're all transforming, you're still on this journey of transformation, and to your real story, a real human being who is embracing this. And so what would you say kind of new perspectives did you gain from this experience as you were able to take 10 steps back? Like what were some nuggets that you gained from this?
Just, this is going to sound funny, but just even being able to, you really pushed me to take time to myself. And that wasn't something that as a new mom that I was good about doing. And so you really pushed me to take that time for yourself without conviction. So, I would go down to the beach here last summer and have my little journal.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think about, okay, what does my life, a perfect day in my future life look like, future career life, and really just try to close my eyes and think about the whole entire day, start to finish, and take notes on what came to mind and what is it that made me happy. Well, what made me happy was thinking about, which I had been for the last 6 years working remote, but thinking of, okay, I'm remote. I'm, somewhere with palm trees near a beach. I'm, surrounded by my family and my son, and yet I'm working and I'm helping people somehow. And the helping people kept coming up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also, time to reflect on, like you just mentioned, on my values. Like, okay, well, what are your values? What are the top 5 most important things to you, in your work life? And those do align with you as a person. So for me, it was, trust and support and an opportunity to grow and learn and be creative, and integrity,
Mm-hmm.
flexibility, and so when I would start exploring, or when I do explore other opportunities, I often look at, okay, well, how does this company, how does it look like they align with my values? And even through an interview process, you can find those things out. So that was another thing I did. And then also, thinking about what made me most happy from my last, my career thus far. What were some of those awesome moments? What did I like about those moments? And then, ways to think about belief systems was another thing that you taught me. Everyone has negative belief systems. I still do have some, and I still work on them.
As we all do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it sounds like such a simple thing, but, thinking, okay, well, like one negative belief system, for example, that I wanted to change was, if I want to try to pivot industries, uh, you know, one belief system I had was that, well, no one's going to see the value of hospitality experience, sales experience. Like, no one's going to think that transfers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, no, you got to change that belief system to say there is a person that is going to see your skills and see you for who you are, and see how you would translate absolutely and be successful in another role.
Yeah.
And, that's, there's different ways you can put a spin on those belief systems, right? Like, it's reasonable to believe, or, these different things. And so that was really helpful, and still is. And another thing too, that you turned me on to was meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been into yoga and fitness, and I'm a very spiritual person. So then I started incorporating mindfulness, meditation, and I mean, all of these different things combined really helped me to, and still do, help me to dig into, okay, what is it that I'm feeling? What is it that, I'm trying to think how to articulate this. Like, what is it really that's going to make me happy? I mean, I have a vision board up here in my office I'm looking at. I even cut out pictures of just different things. Because I guess what I'm trying to convey is that when my industry was turned on its head, I really had no idea what direction to go in. So that's why I was just like, and how do you figure this out, what you want to be when you grow up, when something like that happens. So these are just all different tools,
right?
Different ways I was digging into myself to try to figure it out.
Yeah. And what I love, kind of watching and witnessing your journey, taking yourself out of the identity of a mom or in the travel industry, and what's the essence? Who are you? The essence of who you are, and to kind of identify those core values versus values we take on from society or a job or a culture or whatever, and to come up with your own. And so the feeling place, what I love that you're talking about is kind of the feeling of how you want to feel in a situation, in your next scenario, and to be able to articulate that, because we go so quickly and we're not able to articulate that. And we oftentimes take on doing things because we've done it for X amount of time, or we think we should. And so moving out of the shoulds to the essence and the feeling place. And it's been really cool to see you do that. And also to witness you kind of now in, whether it's in interviews, to be able to be you and be really clear and articulate, why you get up every day, and the making a difference in people's lives, and how you do your work, which are your values, being with an integrity and trust. And so it's been really cool to see you and witness you kind of show up that way. And then the other part of the developing of confidence, right? Moving through the belief systems of self-doubt to say, I have a natural talent and gift. This can be translated. People will hire me for my potential. And so if I'm able to talk about that, and the other part is this learning and growing that you're doing. And so, people will hire for the learning and growth. If you can, if have that growth mindset that we're talking about here, and you've certainly demonstrated that. So it's been really, really fun to watch you do that. And so one of the things that I would love for you to kind of share as well, if you're comfortable with it, is, you've had some pretty amazing, impactful events in your life that I also think when we go through some things, helps us develop resilience. And that's what, the ReSoul Revolution is about, is being able to share really personal stories of and how you developed resilience, and then how it's impacted you now, and what is it that you're doing now as a result. Would you mind sharing?
Sure. When I had a hard time getting pregnant with my son. My husband and I experienced infertility, which kind of came as a surprise to us. We started a little later in life, but we were both very fit, into CrossFit people, ate really healthy. So I don't want to say we were cocky, but we were definitely confident that I never knew that it would be hard. And all of a sudden, we moved out here from Chicago, and bought a house and renovated it, and great, everything's good. Now let's have a kid. And it was like, oh, well, it's not going to be an easy feat. And so finally, we did IUI to get pregnant with my son. And once I was pregnant with him, everything was fine at first. We went to Hawaii as like a little last hurrah. And I was in the first trimester. And I all of a sudden started having awful pelvic pain. And that was kind of the start of, unfortunately, it was kind of like a domino effect. It ruined the rest of our trip. Luckily, it was at the end, but it ruined what was left. And because I was so frightened. And when we came back here, I was told that, you're having a lot of contractions because the fibroids that were in your stomach, which I had been told wouldn't be a problem previous to, are growing, and your body's basically unhappy about it. And so they were very unsure of what would happen. And so kind of fast forward through navigating that and into, I had gone to LA for work, and I was actually feeling pretty good. Had been running around Hollywood for a conference, and I even I finished up, I think it was a Thursday morning, spent the rest of the day at the pool because the weather was dismal here in Seattle. And I flew home that evening because I had a doctor's appointment the next day to kind of check and make sure that, hey, you're feeling good, but we just want to do another ultrasound to see how you're doing. Well, thank God I came back and my flight was on time and all of that, because I got to the doctor's office. And again, I was actually feeling better. So unbeknownst to me, they said, I remember the radiologist looking and saying, oh my gosh, you could see like the alarm on her face, and which alarmed me.
Yeah.
She said, you need to get to your doctor's office right away. And so I did, and she didn't give me much explanation. And so I went to my doctor's office, which was just another floor down in the building. And she said to me, listen, you might be having preterm labor. We need to do an emergency surgery to basically sew your cervix shut, and you could lose your son.
Wow.
She was very, as doctors need to be, just that kind of blank, delivering this news. And I, of course, was beside myself, in shock, I think, about what was going to happen. She had already had me pre-admitted to the hospital, and she's like, I'll call your husband. It was very all at once. And, it's like one of those moments where you hear people say, like, time stands still, and it definitely did.
Yeah.
And so it went well. But they kept telling me, there's a possibility that this isn't going to hold very long, and that he either will be born and not make it, or he will be born and be in NICU for months, and that's going to be hard. They kept kind of like, I feel like they gave you the worst case scenario news. And so I also had to live with the fact that, hey, you're on bed rest now. You can shower and eat. That's it. And I was an extremely active person. CrossFit, walking. I traveled, like I said, for work. So it was like, wait, what? It was kind of like being in lockdown with COVID, now that I think about it. Except it was me and not everybody else. But it was wild. And it was painful and scary. And, I have my brother here, but I didn't have, my parents at the time didn't live here. And my husband was great through it, but it was just such a scary time. And I was in a lot of pain. And I didn't really understand what had caused all of this to happen. And the doctors really didn't know either.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's, medical practice, because they just weren't sure. And, which was shocking to me that they still don't know so much about women's health.
Yeah.
Still so much that's not known. And I would keep asking, like, well, I don't understand. And they gave me all these different conditions that it could be that they thought it was. And, well, we think it's, partly your fibroids, or it's this, or maybe it's not. Like, nobody had an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Specialists, nobody. And so I just felt very isolated and alone. And I remembered thinking to myself, one day I'm going to put this out there somehow, so that if there's another woman or, a couple going through this, that they know they're not alone. And it was a hard time. And so finally, 2 years later, when COVID happened, I was like, you know what? This is my time, that I'm going to put this story out there. And I'm going to start a podcast. Podcast was the medium I decided on to do this. And so in telling friends about it, all of a sudden, people started saying, hey, like, because one of my close friends here in Seattle, she actually is who was a huge support to me through what I went through, because she, totally different condition, but went through something scary as well with her pregnancy, and was in the hospital for a long time and things. And so she was a big support and of my podcast. And she said, I would love to tell my story. And so she was my first guest. Well, then it kind of like started sprinkling out to other people. And I've just been interviewing folks and learning all of these amazing stories that other people had, because they felt the same need to share what they've been through. And it's just been so cool and giving me so much purpose to help people like this, because it's really cathartic, is what I've been told, to share what you've been through.
Yeah.
And it's in hopes to inspire and encourage other people so that they know they're not alone. It's called Resilience Found.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be about pregnancy. It doesn't have to be just women. It can be men too. But, infertility and pregnancy issues were kind of like my reasoning for doing it. So there, of course, are more episodes about that. But it's just been awesome to do. And yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been really cool.
That is, and I just think that it's such an amazing story again, where you took this time with COVID to like pull it all together and to, you having gone through what you went through and rather than being victim of it, to be able to share your story. And so that purpose of helping others, your values of helping others. And you're absolutely right that, that's what the ReSoul Revolution is about. That's what the Resilience Found is about. It's sharing real stories to create a platform and a voice for people to help inspire and provide tools. And so people don't feel alone and be a model for that transformation. And it's really cool to witness that journey, that this was literally birthed out of the pandemic in one sense, and to, honor the resilience that you developed through it. And, so what would you say kind of to the audience in terms of, well, first of all, where can you find Resilience Found? What podcast platform?
Shameless plug, right? You can find it on Spotify, Apple, Google, Audible, and all the major platforms, and in Podbean as well.
Okay, perfect. And then what would you tell kind of, the audience, like if you could go back in time, what would you tell people, like what, in terms of the nuggets that you've experienced through this transformation, what would you tell people?
Gosh, that's a good question. I would say tune in to yourself, make that time for yourself to be quiet, like that space. And really, for me, journaling is what made it easier, but really just tuning into how you feel when you hear certain things like that. Something else you taught me, the bell, the body, the language, and the emotion that you feel when you hear about something, whether it's an opportunity or something in a relationship. Your body never lies, and you'll feel like your heart start to beat fast, or maybe you'll feel exhilarated. It just depends. And being able to really get to know yourself on that deep level and tune in is so just life-changing. And it plays into mindfulness and meditation and all those things. And I know they have the woo-woo reputation at times, but I think especially through something like COVID, I think a lot of people have found that a lot of us do need those tools to navigate different things in life. And I wish that I would have been more in tune. I thought I was, but I didn't realize until, it takes a life-changing event to really kind of reevaluate things for yourself. And you shouldn't be shy about doing it.
I love it. And what I appreciate so much that you've said is kind of this idea, what we call kind of, as we've talked about, the bell model, body, emotion, and language, and that feeling place. And when you're feeling triggered or you're feeling self-doubt, where you're feeling worried, like what is being aware of that self-talk, that language piece that's going on, what thought pattern, which then becomes a belief system. And if you're not feeling good, then being able to address it, create a new belief system to create a new feeling and how it impacts your body. And so, you created like this discipline, this ritual. And so rather than now waiting, and as what I so appreciate you've done is that you don't have to respond to a life event, the positive, or negative, but you can be much more neutral, that you can be proactive in letting go of feelings that don't serve you and underlying the feeling, taking that quiet time to really articulate, why am I feeling this? What is it I'm feeling? What is the self-talk that's not serving me? And then being able to interrupt that. And so taking that forward, whether your new endeavor to being able to share to people and how we manage through challenging times, because life throws stuff at us, as we have experienced this year in particular. So you're a wonderful, just such a inspiration and demonstration of how you've embraced it. and making it your own, and then developing this purpose through it. So, and making a difference for people. So I so appreciate you sharing your story, and to the world, and everybody go listen to Resilience Found, Andrea Mott Rodriguez, and just a wonderful woman who will, share her story with you to really empower others to do the same. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you being a part of the ReSoul Revolution podcast series. It's an honor.
Thank you, Rachel. It was awesome to be here.
Thank you. All right. We'll talk soon.
Please reach out to me if you have a story to share. We'd love to hear from you and how you created change in yourself and developed resilience, purpose, and confidence. You can inspire others to resoul, resurge, to shine, and thrive. You can reach out to me at rachel@facetscoaching.com or go to theresoulrevolution.com. You can also subscribe to the ReSoul Revolution on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube to hear more interviews with real people and real stories of resurgence. By listening, you're contributing to the movement, the ReSoul Revolution.